Now, the Public Enterprises Minister refused to share names of politicians accused of Eskom corruption. Pravin Gordhan appeared before Parliament's Standing Committee on Public Accounts yesterday. He was giving an update on what is being done about the allegations by erstwhile CEO Andre De Ruyter. Gordhan also said Eskom was not the only feeding through for the ANC, but private companies also benefited. He also insinuated that De Ruyter did everything besides his job. Now let's bring in political analyst Sanet Madonsela to discuss these developments. Sanet, good morning and thank you so much for joining us. It doesn't seem like we'll ever get to the bottom of who is responsible at Eskom, especially when it comes to corruption and the names of people that may be implicated.
Good morning. Thanks so much for having me. I think at this point, people are playing the runaround, but this has happened before, where you have someone revealing information that the public isn't necessarily aware of, and over time, more and more of the information starts coming out. So I think at some point, people may be subpoenaed to actually come and tell us who those names are, but I think it's just a matter of time. I also believe that maybe Andre De Ruyter doesn't want to share the names, as he mentioned, for his own safety and so on, but it's interesting that the Minister of Public Enterprises isn't interested in mentioning those names, and that he just says that he doesn't want to participate in a smear campaign. So hopefully the investigation that's underway will reveal the identities of the individuals implicated.
What did you make of the demeanour of Pravin Gordhan in front of the Standing Committee on Scopa, in the sense that he seemed to me very agitated, number one, also saying that he had reached out to Andre De Ruyter when the interview was broadcast, the interview with our colleague Annika Larsen, and he said he sent him the clip and De Ruyter didn't respond. What did you make of his demeanour?
I think that the minister was very defensive for some or other reason. It seemed that he was more going on a rant, and he was actually, for lack of better wording, it seemed like character assassination. Instead of actually dealing with the fact that South Africans want to know who these individuals is, in fact of wanting to actually address the issues, it seemed that he wanted to personalize the issues, because he would also go on talking about which CEO has time to write chapters at night, whether he was recording people or not actually dealing with the matter at hand. So it doesn't matter whether or not De Ruyter was writing a book. It doesn't really matter whether De Ruyter responded to him or not. I think what's more important is actually investigating, finding out whether there is problems at Eskom, the extent to these problems, and who is implicated in terms of these problems, and then finding ways to address the problems. Because I mean, South Africa's going on to load shedding stage 9 soon. So I think people are tired, for lack of better wording, and I think they want answers, and I think that this would have been the most opportune moment for Pravin to actually give us that glimmer of hope.
Yes, but this has also put a spanner in the works, considering that when De Ruyter had been appointed, he had seemed like, in the words of Minister Pravin Gordhan, saying that he's the know-it-all. You know, he was supposed to be the messiah, fix the electricity mess in a short space of time within budget, but all of that has fallen flat now.
That's true. I think that it was a lot to put on one individual, and I think that whoever took on the task of trying to repair what's been going on at Eskom was taking on a big task, because you would know that as early as 1998 there were warnings in terms of how to address the infrastructure challenges at Eskom. They were talking about actually extending the grid and all of the changes and maintenance that would have to be underway in order for us to have electricity in 2023, and none of those changes were actually implemented. And I think that it wouldn't be right to just put it on one person, especially if you take into consideration the interview that De Ruyter had, where he indicated that they had cameras, they have all of these all of these measures put in place to actually try and mitigate or reduce the amount of sabotage that was taking place at Eskom, but it just continued. And I mean, if you have people who are on the inside who know how the system works and what preventative measures were put in place, it doesn't matter whether you are a good CEO or not. You can't have one person trying to undo what thousands of people are trying to undo.
Yeah, but Sanet, we can't say,
that.
sorry to interrupt you, we can't say with certainty that there is corruption, because even the newly minted electricity minister, first day, or when he had an opportunity to speak, going to the various power stations, said that in his view there is no corruption. So we don't know necessarily what is really going on with regards to the sabotage or allegations of corruption at Eskom. Or do we?
I don't think that we can say that with certainty, but I also think it would be wrong to say that there is no corruption. If you take that Eskom was one of the SOEs that was implicated in terms of state capture, it would be hard to imagine that all of that just disappeared because there was a commission into the state capture allegation. So I think that there might be. I think that it is worth investigating. I think that it would be wrong not to investigate or not to proceed any further, given the extent of our load shedding, given our electricity crisis, and given the impact that all of this has in terms of our economy. So I say that if there is smoke, rather investigate the smoke before it turns out into a complete fire.
Yeah, and I also think it brings to light the vetting process of appointing senior executives at state-owned entities, because now, one would argue that perhaps Andre De Ruyter's CV was embellished and he was not fit for the job, so to speak.
I think that there are people who are excellent on paper. I think that there are people who have amazing CVs, who have great accolades, and who have worked in top positions. I don't think that that could merely be taken on whether someone would succeed or not succeed in a job. I don't think that... to be honest, I think that whoever took on this position would have been facing the exact same challenges. I think that's why there were a number of people who were requested to apply for this position, and they were never interested because they knew the extent of Eskom's problems, and they didn't want to burden themselves or entangle themselves in what would eventually end up in a scandal. And I think that De Ruyter was more than willing to actually participate in terms of trying to get the SOE out of its problems, its challenges, and so on. But I don't think that he was going to succeed regardless of whether he was good at managing something or not. But I also think that it would be wrong to not acknowledge Mr. De Ruyter's shortcomings, and I think that there are a number of shortcomings.
We're going to have to leave it there. Political analyst Sanet Madonsela just reflecting on the scope of presentation by Minister Pravin Gordhan yesterday in terms of De Ruyter's impact or lack thereof at the ailing power utility.